As many of you know, President Biden has recently announced that he will not be running for a second term in this upcoming election, which has caused all kinds of mass hysteria on both sides, right? Because people are like, well, we thought he was going to dig in. We thought he was good. And he just decided that he wanted to pass the torch on, possibly to Vice President Harris or others who are interested in running for president. We're in very interesting times now with all of this political theater that's going on. And the person that I know that understands the theater best is Attorney Gerald Briggs. And we got him coming up. As we all know, President Biden said that he was going to pass the torch on to her, rightfully so. I think he made the right decision. We'll say.
Well, we are a nonpartisan organization, so we don't comment directly on candidates. But what we can say is this is the most consequential election of our lifetime. And one way or the other, history will be made. So, the NAACP has been resolute for 115 years, standing for the advancement of African Americans and people of color. And it looks like that we are on the precipice of seeing something that's never been seen before on both sides. And so I'm excited. Like I said, we're all in. We got to hear directly from the President of the United States at the convention as he outlined what he hopes to accomplish in the completion of his term. And we hope he's able to do those things. And then we're looking forward to mobilizing the vote like we mobilized before. And so I think that, whichever way this turns out, we're going to be witnessing history, and we're excited to be a part of making history.
Now, I heard some rumblings out there that the Republicans might be planning to bring about some sort of lawsuit stopping this transfer of power, so to speak, from Biden to Harris, because a candidate can't do that legally. What do you know about it?
Well, we don't typically get involved in political issues as far as, who the candidates are, but I do understand what the rules are in both parties. And I don't think one party has standing to sue the other party for their determination of who the nominee will be. I think there's going to be an open process in Chicago next month. I think there was an open process in Milwaukee a few days ago. So I think that at this point, we're seeing a lot of political doublespeak going on. But I think ultimately the voters in both parties will make the decisions as they have. And then ultimately the American people will make a decision on who the next leader will be. My understanding is President Joe Biden is not stepping down from his role as the president of the United States. He's still the president of the United States. But in his private capacity, he has endorsed the vice president of the United States. And so I think we're going to see this thing play out in the way that the rules and the bylaws of both parties have it to play out, and nobody will be disenfranchised from their vote.
So let's talk about the process, because a lot of people don't understand this. We're seeing history unravel on so many different levels on both sides. Is there going to be, as you said, an open process where people who are interested can now say, hey, look at me, and then it's announced at the convention? Like, what is the process at this point?
So again, no one is the nominee yet. What would have to happen is the person would have to achieve enough delegates from the Democratic Party to become the nominee, similar to what we saw in Milwaukee with the number of pledged delegates pledging their support behind the current Republican nominee, Donald Trump. And so there are conversations that are going on. People are throwing their endorsements, but ultimately, until the convention is gavelled in and there's a actual floor vote by the states on the pledged delegates, we won't have a nominee from the Democratic Party yet. So what will happen from this point on is, I believe Vice President Harris has already filed with the Federal Elections Commission to run. Other people can file, and there are rumblings that there probably will be a few other candidates who file. And then there will be a floor vote of the pledged delegates from the states. And if she gets enough votes from the pledged delegates, then she'll be the nominee. If not, then it'll go to the super delegates, which are elected officials, the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, and others are super delegates, as well as other people. And so that's how the process will play out. And back in 1968, curiously enough, in Chicago, the former president Lyndon Baines Johnson announced that he would not be seeking the nomination for
That's
the
right.
Democratic Party.
That's
And
right.
so we saw a different person nominated, and we saw an election that did not have an incumbent. So we've seen this before. It's exciting to see it in this time because many of us, who were born in the 70s didn't see that. And of course, people born in the 80s and 90s and 2000s have never seen it before, but this has happened before. And this makes for great political banter about what's about to happen.
There are a lot of things that I'm hearing as it relates to the numbers. And I know you can't speak on any specific candidate, but just in general, as it relates to the numbers, whether or not Vice President Harris may have a chance at beating Donald Trump, just based on the polling out there and the fervor out there that you're hearing.
I think this is a wide open race. I think that basically you're going to have a decision to make about what our democracy looks like. And I think that, polls are polls, and polls don't ever poll the entire country or the entire electorate. And so I kind of discount the polls. The energy that I'm hearing from on the ground is exceptional on both sides. It feels like a 2008 type of scenario. So I wouldn't count out either candidate. And I would never count out Black women at all. I've learned too many times from too many Black women that I love to never count out a Black woman. So I think that people are going to see a race they've never seen before. And I think that these next 100 days are going to be real interesting.
So Vice President Harris starts off with 0 delegates at this point. Like, she's literally having to start from scratch. Is that not correct?
Yeah, she'd have to start from scratch, because now current President Joe Biden has released his delegates. So the delegates are now making decisions. I'm sure they're on calls all over the country making their decision. People are coalescing around what pick they want to make. And I think ultimately it will probably come down to her being the nominee. And then we will go into the presidential campaign, which we're already in. And so I think it's going to be an exciting sprint to the finish.
So there are millions of dollars that I understand that's already in the Biden-Harris coffers, right?
Yes.
Now,
Well, there are millions of dollars in the Biden presidential campaign fund, but there also has been a fund set up for the current individuals running Kamala Harris. And I heard that they've raised up in upwards of 46 million in less than a day. And so there's a lot of excitement on both sides. Of course, President Trump has been raising funds. I think he's raised somewhere north of $200 million or something like that. And so I think that there's a lot of excitement, but there's campaigning and fundraising going on both sides.
If anything, what can you say or speak to in regards to the assassination attempt, not relative to whether, because there's a lot of talk out there, people saying this was not real, all of these kind of things.
Yeah.
As it relates to the bump, did he get a bump number wise as it relates to this thing occurring or not?
So far, the polls have not shown a significant bump after the failed assassination attempt of the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. And I want to say my heart goes out to him and his family. Nobody should have to go through that level of political violence simply for running for president. So we want to make sure that's underscored that no one should resort to political violence. But what I will say is there are some questions around the circumstances, and that's why they're having hearings as we speak to determine why and how a person could get that close to the former president of the United States without the Secret Service, doing their job to make sure that this doesn't happen. So they're having hearings right now on Capitol Hill to get to the bottom of that. And my heart goes out to President Trump for having to endure that. We do know that he was injured in his ear. And so we want to make sure that this never happens again. But for all those people that are online speculating, let's wait until all the facts play out. We did see on live television and live stream the former president was attempted to be assassinated, and that should never be a conversation we're having in the United States. It's un-American, and what people need to understand is we can we can disagree without becoming disagreeable or without becoming violent. And people need to understand that as we are shifting from a television centered reality to an actual digital internet centered reality, we have to have the same level of professional discourse. Listen, you can disagree with me in the comments, you can say all kinds of things. That doesn't make it true, and that doesn't make it right. And I've seen people prosecuted for saying vile and hateful and despicable things that lead to violence. Right. And so you need to understand freedom of speech only goes so far. So far, you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater and not think that things won't happen. You can't say you're going to try to kill somebody and then act on it and not get charged. So people need to understand that reality is coming to these social platforms, and your words and deeds will catch up with you. So we don't need to do all that stuff. Yes, politics is an interesting place to be, but it should not cost somebody their life.
Well, you said something interesting. We are in the digital age. Television is kind of like a dinosaur. And again, that's my background. You know, I've been for 40 years. However, I get more love and more viewers online than I do on television. That's Absolutely. Why I'm here. So, Attorney Griggs, like always, brother, it's amazing to get your perspective. You're always on point when it comes to information. And we're going to see how this whole thing plays out in the very near future.
Yes, we will. And I just want people to take a moment, step back for a moment. I know we've gone through about 4 decades and about 8 years, but we are in a truly historic time that people 40 to 50 to 100 years from now will look back on where we are right now. And you have to ask yourself, which side of history are you going to be on? Because history is taking notes on all of your tweets, all of your posts, and all of the things that you were saying in public. And just know that your grandkids will wonder why you said some of the things that you said in this time. Let's be on the right side of history. And y'all need to join the NAACP because we're all in.
Attorney Griggs, like always, thank you, sir. And we'll see you on the other side.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.